got at the sides and one at the back for the sisters. And then we'll have our final speaker, and after which we'll open up to question and answers. Now, first speaker we've got is Ibrahim Karir. He's come from Coventry today. Previously he was Hindu, but now he's quite fond of his beef burgers. So without further ado, I'll just try. I'll introduce him.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, as-salatu wa-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And firstly, I'd like to thank you for coming today to attend this event. I mean, it's a nice day, the sun's out. I know my kids were pestering me about going to the park. So Jazakallah khair for taking some time out and attending today's event. And I'd also like to thank the brothers that have arranged this event as well for inviting me, because it gives me the opportunity to gain some reward. And we all need to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it also provides me the opportunity to outline to you some of the factors and the thinking that I went through before I took my shahada, before I became a Muslim. I spent most of my youth growing up in a street called Church Street. And I think it's a very apt named street, because right opposite my house there was a Gurdwara. Up the road from me there was a church. Behind the church there was another church. Behind that church there was the masjid. Behind the Gurdwara there was a Polish church. Behind the Polish church there was a mandir. There was about 8 places of worship, which were about 2 minutes walk just from my house. So I've got all these places of worship really close to me, but to some extent, religion, it never really played a big impact or had a big impact in my life. I think if you ask me who I am, I'd say I'm Hindu. But I think in terms of my practices, it probably only went as far as the fact that I didn't eat beef. And then you have exam time, and then when you have exams, it's always a time where you feel that you need to turn to something higher, that you feel your weakness and you need to turn to something higher, especially if anyone's in A-level physics. I can probably appreciate what I'm talking about. So I'm just living my life in this society, enjoying myself, experimenting a bit, different clothing, different music, trying to decide who I am. And I think it was in sixth form that my identity really started to be shaped. Because sixth forms have like ready-made groupings which you can just fall into. So you walk into your sixth form, and in one corner you've got a group of girls that seem to hang around together. The other corner you've got the people that are into the Oasis and the Happy Mondays and stuff like that. Then you've got another corner in which you've got the people that are actually there to study. They're the nerds. They're actually there to actually gain an education. And then you've got like the Asian crowd. And the Asian crowd is, you know, I imagine most of you know, you've all been to schools in these countries. But it's mostly a group of Hindus and Sikhs, a few Muslims thrown into the mix. They share a similar taste in music. They've got a similar language. They like the same kind of films. And they all come from the Asian subcontinent. Or back in the day, their parents would have come from there. So when I entered this sixth form, I found myself attracted to that crowd. So I was part of the Asian crowd, and I soon became part of the Asian crowd. I was the Punjabi amongst the Asian crowd. And my interaction with the people in this crowd, it was shaped by that identity. So when I was with them, it was all kidda, tik-tak and stuff like this. You'd also try and look the part. So I'd spend money and I'd buy the clothes, and I think back in the day it was like baggy jeans and roll neck tops and stuff like that. I had my ears pierced, had gold rings placed in my ears. I grew my hair long and had like a wavy perm, because this was the look back in the day. And then there was the music, and I think the music is a dominant part of this crowd, this Asian culture, Asian crowd. And I had to buy everything. So I'd go to the shop and I'd buy the latest Bhangra, the latest Bollywood. The guy knew me. We were on first name terms. He'd put the stuff to one side to me, you know, the latest DCS and the like. And it was almost like my life, it was turning into a Bollywood song or a Bhangra track. Now, Bhangra tracks, if any of you don't know, they have a very similar theme to them. They're either all about girls, they're either all about dancing, or they're all about drinking. And if you hit the jackpot, you get all three in one track. And I think that was one of the reasons why I used to love going to Asian weddings. You know, I couldn't wait for the invites to come through the post. And then I'd glam myself up and I'd go to the weddings, because you'd have the girls there dressed in a certain way. It was open bar. You can drink whatever you want, as much as you want. And then you'd have your live bands, and you can basically drink and dance until you drop. Occasionally that did happen as well. And if there were no invites, if a few weeks had gone and we didn't have any invites, then me and my friends, we would often gate crash weddings. Just to maintain that fix, that buzz, we had to keep on going. At least once a month we had to go to one of these places. Now somewhere along the line, I've passed my A-levels. With all this going on, I've passed my A-levels. And I've got a place at UCL in London. And you've got to take into account that this is at a time where the government would give you a grant, or you'd be paid to do a course at university. So now here I am. I'm off to London, and I've got my grant check in my bank account. And I'm there, and my first thing is, let's seek out this Asian crowd at university. My parents aren't here now to keep an eye on me, so let me try and take my Asian adventure to the next level. So first day, I turn up at my course, and I'm there, and I'm hunting around, trying to find the brown faces, almost in a mechanical fashion, and I found some. You know, you quickly find some, because Asian faces, they generally gather together. So I introduced myself, and they introduced themselves to me. And there was Sajid, there was Wasim, there was Firauz, there was Saeed. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, Muslims. Okay, Muslims, not a problem. They're Asian. I'll hang around with them for now until someone or something better comes along. Then you got Freshers' Fair. And Freshers' Fair is when all the societies, they want your £2. I think it's probably £5 now, yeah? But back in those days, it was £2. They all wanted your £2. So I went and I joined the societies. And I joined quite a few societies. But I made sure I joined every single Asian-related society. The Asian Society, the Sikh Society, the Hindu Society. I even joined the Islamic Society. Such was my thinking that they're Asian, it's all the same. I was working on the principle, spread the net out wide, you can always narrow it down later on. And things, they settled down. I found a partner in crime, someone who would go clubbing with me, and we'd go to all the Bhangra gigs, the R&B, because Asian culture became R&B culture back in those days as well. There was the jungle nights, and then we started to expand our network. Strange thing was, he was Muslim as well. And then a friend of mine, he invited me to a talk from the Islamic Society. And it was, is there a God, proof of creator type of a talk. And I turned up there, and it was strange, because all the other societies I'd gone to, the Hindu Society, the Sikh Society, it was all about free mixing, jaan, samosa type of parties. But in this, religion appeared to be the dominant factor, more than, say, a culture or language. And I wasn't expecting this at all. And I think it was because of what I knew about Islam back in those days. I think if you'd asked me, what is Islam? I'd say, you've got people and they're Muslims and they pray, they got Ramadan and they fast. If you'd asked me where Muslims come from, I'd have probably said Pakistan. Makkah might have been a district in Lahore for all I knew. That's the level of my Islam. So now here I am. I'm surrounded by Muslims. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But for the first time in my life, I'm finding out about this religion called Islam. I'm finding people, they're expressing a commitment to a religion. That people's identity can be shaped by a religion. So you've got young women, they're wearing headscarves. You've got people getting up in the middle of a lecture to pray Zohar. There was none of this boys checking out the girls and girls checking out the boys as it was with all the other societies. In fact, they hardly even looked at each other, never mind spoke to each other. And for me, this was a culture shock. This was a shock for me, because this wasn't Asian culture as I knew it. But when I looked at the faces, they were brown. And when it came to what they spoke, they probably spoke Punjabi even better than I could. So I tried to ignore this, but nonetheless, it was fairly intriguing.